Hi, I'm Mike, and welcome to the first of a new series on my channel, which is about discovering films that are hidden or not very well known about, or I think are underrated, that I really love and I want to share with you and get your opinions about. I'd like you to watch them and see what you think of them. These are films that have been special to me over the years, and I wish they were better known. So I'm going to pick about 5 or 6 films in each episode. And today we're going to start with this film, The House of Mirth by Terence Davis. Now, Terence Davis is a highly regarded filmmaker. He came back this year with Benediction, The Life of Siegfried Sassoon. He's very highly rated, but this film, for some reason I don't really understand, is not highly rated. Nor is Gillian Anderson's performance, which is one of the great performances in British film, I think. This is an adaptation of Edith Wharton's novel, turn of the century novel set in high society New York, but it was filmed largely in Britain. I think it was filmed largely in Glasgow, weirdly enough. And it has a cast, excellent cast. Laura Linney is in the film, Eric Stoltz is in the film, remember him? But it's really Gillian Anderson's film, and she plays this young society woman, beautiful, wealthy, got everything ahead of her. But she starts to make the wrong choices in terms of men. In wanting to be independent and in wanting to be financially secure and so on, she starts to butt heads with the high society. And slowly, through maintaining her integrity, she actually makes things more and more difficult for herself. And the result is that her life just goes down and down and down. It's a very tragic story, but it's beautifully filmed, beautifully paced by Terence Davis. And Gillian Anderson's performance is extraordinary. So if you're a Gillian Anderson fan, this is a must film. Now, talking about women fighting against the odds, Offside. Now, this is a really great little movie. It's a little known film. It was made in about 2006, and Iran had a chance to get into the World Cup. They had a massive World Cup qualifier playing in Tehran. But according to the rules in Iran, women were not allowed in. You couldn't have female football fans. So Jafar Panahi, the filmmaker Jafar Panahi, who is now, I think, under house arrest, or at least he was when I last looked, he made this film. He got together a group of young actresses, and he got them to play football fans who want to get into the stadium. And he filmed most of the film on the hoof around the stadium before and during the game. So it's really on the hoof political filmmaking. And if that makes it sound a bit dry, it's actually very funny. It's a comedy. And it's a very moving and likeable one. It's a very fresh and funny film. And I think a good kind of political cinema, that makes its point, but it makes it in an entertaining fashion. And right there, on the cusp of the events that it's talking about, rather than some dry analysis after the event. So this is a really good film. If you've never seen it, it's great fun, very enjoyable, and probably the best film about football I've ever seen. Now, the third film, you might have some difficulty getting hold of this in the UK, though you can get hold of it from Criterion in the US. WR Mysteries of the Organism, or Mysteries of the Orgasm, as I thought it was called for years, which is kind of appropriate because a lot of this film is about sex. It's a kind of pseudo-documentary about a guy called Wilhelm Reich and his theories about sex and sexual energy. And the filmmaker Dusan Makavejev, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Dusan Makavejev, who was Yugoslavian, he was from the old Yugoslavia before it split up. He connects this with communist politics and totalitarianism. Now, if that doesn't make it sound like an odd movie, it's even odder than that. It's very funny, it's very weird, it has some very strange orgasms. It also has talk about youthful revolution in Yugoslavian society. Was it under Tito was his name? And I just think this is one of the strangest, most fascinating, most enjoyable movies I've ever seen. And if you'd said that a Yugoslav filmmaker making a film about Marxism and sex that was also a documentary and also a comedy, that could exist, I would never have believed you until I saw it. But it's this movie, so if you can get hold of it, this is definitely worth anyone's time. Now, I wanted to share with you some more modern movies, like, I think a lot of modern mainstream cinema is really bad. And I don't watch, superhero movies. I don't watch rom-coms. Most of the time these days, I don't watch modern films. Rare, modern films that are really good and interesting and original works of art, I'm afraid, are very rare. So I'm going to introduce two that I've seen in the last 5 years that I think are astonishing. The first is this, An Elephant Sitting Still, by a director called Hubo, who, unfortunately, this was his first film, and he committed suicide shortly after making it. And the film has been championed by his parents and his family ever since, which doesn't bode well, does it? And actually, in a way, the film is a kind of suicide note. It's 4 hours long. It's a Chinese art film. Bear with me. It's about a day in the life of a crappy city in the north of China, and 4 people living in that city. A sort of local hoodlum who sees his friend jump out of a window because the hoodlum is sleeping with the friend's wife. A boy who gets into trouble because he pushes a bully down the stairs at school. His girlfriend, and also an old war veteran who's being thrown out by his 2 children. So it's a pretty bleak film. It's all set in one day, it's very slow, but I can honestly say this is probably the greatest film I've seen in the last 10 years. It's so powerful, it's so compelling, it's very moving, it's hugely intelligent, brilliantly acted. It's just what you go to the cinema for. And ultimately, even though it's an extremely bleak film, it's a very human film. And also it's got a great title, An Elephant Sitting Still. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to watch that? Give you a little clue, actually. Don't get too excited about seeing the elephant. Okay? But I can't recommend this enough. Okay, it's 4 hours out of your life and it is quite demanding, but it is a great movie. Another modern classic, and a very little regarded film, at least in England, is this film, Sunset, by the Hungarian director Laszlo Nemes. Now, Laszlo Nemes came to fame kind of controversially in about 2015 when he made a film called Son of Saul, which was set in the Holocaust and showed a guy actually working in the camps as a Sonderkommando, one of the Jewish people who helped the Nazis run the ovens and the gas camps. Very controversial film. I think one of the critic in the New York Times said it was intellectually reprehensible. I disagree. I think it's a major film, a brilliant film if you've never seen it. This was his follow-up. This didn't get much attention, and I really think it deserves it. It's one of the strangest, most brilliant films I've seen in the last few years. It's set in pre-war Budapest, and this young lady here wants to go and work as a milliner in this shop in Budapest that her parents set up, this famous fashion shop. But there is a mystery in the shop. Her brother, who used to work there, has disappeared, and she goes on this odyssey to try and find him and gets mixed up with the underworld of revolutionary politics in Budapest. I love this film. I'm still not quite sure what it is. Is it a fantasia? Is it a kind of allegory of Hungarian history? Is it just some kind of weird shaggy dog story? I don't know. But it's all in the filming. Nemes is an extraordinary stylist. He uses these long sequence shots with movements back and forth and people moving in and out of frame. It's, if you like that kind of thing, it's a cinephile's delight. It's like a big pudding of beautiful cinema. Great cinematography, extraordinary movement and playfulness, pushing and pulling the audience all over the place. It's a real, sui generis film. It's like, there's nothing I've ever seen like it before. I think it's a step forward from Son of Saul, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't seem to agree, and it's been neglected. Take a chance on it. It's really interesting. I'm going to finish this little video with a guilty pleasure. The Man Who Haunted Himself. Believe it or not, Roger Moore's favourite film. I love this film so much that this was the first film I ever lashed out tons of money on to buy from abroad. I bought it from America when I had my first multi-region DVD player because I love this film so much and I never thought it was going to come out in England. This is a cult horror movie. It's not really very horrific. And it's about this boring London banker. And he lives this very dull middle-class life, drives a Rolls Royce, very pompous. He keeps this little mistress in a flat in Kensington. And then one day he suddenly feels the need to drive very fast. It's very badly done. And he has this car crash. And when he's on the operating table, there's a second lifeline beep. And suddenly into this world comes a new Roger Moore, the same man, but a bit more sexier and a bit more charismatic. And slowly he starts to take over the old Roger Moore's life. It's a story that's been done before on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, on The Twilight Zone. It's an old favourite. But I saw this when I was a teenager, and it had a very deep effect on me. I was a very shy, angst-ridden teenager. And usually in this kind of story, you get a bad alter ego who comes into the world. This one, the alter ego who comes in is nice, and everyone likes him. But as a shy, angsty teenager, that annoyed me. I thought, why does the shy, boring guy get pushed out by this charismatic, sexy guy? And it made me feel sad, and it made me feel injustice. And that's probably why the film has haunted me over the years, and I love it to bits. It's a great, great movie. Roger Moore does give actually quite a good performance in it. And I also love it. It's one of these movies where it has a soundtrack score that keeps getting repeated in different modes, different registers, like jazzy, orchestral, slow, on the soundtrack. I'm going to give a link below to the original version that is played in the movie that has now been released on YouTube. If you're a fan of cult movies, fan of Roger Moore, this is a must. Okay, so thank you very much. I'll be introducing you to other films that I love in other versions of this video. Thanks for watching.